What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the show where it's our privilege to be here with you each and every week. This week, I'm excited to share with you kind of a message I deliver in a lot of my classes and a book and how it kind of ties into a book I've recently read and what it means to us in our day-to-day lives. I want to title this episode like Connection Before Correction, and that's the importance of having a connection with the people we're leading prior to the situation we're leading through, having a connection on the human level, right? Not through emails, not through text, but actually understanding one another. So I want to start this off by sharing with you that leadership isn't defined by our big moments, right? It's revealed in the small ones. Most leaders, when you think about this, we think of we imagine ourselves leading in the crisis, the big event for whatever it is in our industry, whether it's a fire, a confrontation, a high stakes decision where all the money's on the line, all the business's futures at stake. But a lot of times we forget to realize that we don't rise to the level of the moment. We fall to the level of the relationships we built, especially when it's with other people and will they trust us or not. Connection before correction. I like that phrase. It's the foundation of our leadership program for a reason because it's not soft. It's not optional. It's not a nice to have. I want you to ponder this. That trust, that relationship is the difference between influence and authority, between trust and compliance, between whether people follow you because they believe in you or because they fear you. And to understand why this matters so much, I want to tie it to a book I've been reading that really fascinated with me because it was a tragedy, right? So that catches our attention. Like, wait a second, what happened here? How did this happen? And it highlighted to me what I took away from was a moment where the right decision wasn't enough because the relationships weren't there. The book I'm talking about is Young Men in Fire, written by Norman McLean, in which he investigates the tragic Man Gulch fire in Montana. And it was set in 1949 when a crew of smoke jumpers, which was kind of new to the world at the time, suffered their first fatal fire incident, jumping into what they thought was a routine fire. Right, they would jump into a routine fire, and they had a 10 o'clock in the morning kind of standard, which meant they had a lot of bravado. They were in great physical shape, and they would show up and they would fight these fires. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, they'd be back doing their regular thing. And the foreman of this team was named Wag Dodge. He was experienced, competent, well respected in the firefighting world, and he was really good at fixing things and doing things. So when the fire season started, he wasn't part of the team. He wasn't part of the training. He was off working kind of on his own, fixing stuff and taking care of the base because they valued him so much and he was so good with his hands and skilled, right? And that ends up being a downfall. When I read this, I'm like, wait a second, right? He never trained with his crew. He didn't know their names. They didn't know his voice. There's no shared history or rapport or connection, like suffering together, doing the hard things together, hanging out together. And then they jump into what's a routine fire, and suddenly the fire turns and explodes on them. And now they're in a fight for their life. Now it's crisis. And Dodge makes a decision. Some will say brilliant, some debate it, that was completely unheard of at the time. Lighting what's called an escape fire, a small fire which is meant to burn the fuel all around them so the main fire can skip over and the firefighters could hide in the escape fire space, the safe zone they were created. It was an innovative idea. It was counterintuitive, right? Who would think to light a fire to fight a fire? Some would say it was the only chance they had. And yet no one followed him. Not one of the other firefighters stayed where he asked them to stay. They ran, they scattered. 13 men ended up dying. 2 survived. 2 that were way ahead of them got up and over the old reef and through a crevasse. But Dodge survived. He stayed. He followed his own orders. He lit the fire, and then he hunkered down right there, and the main fire went over him. And a leadership, what we're trying to understand is in that moment, why wouldn't the guys follow him? Why would they question him or do their own thing, especially if he was the most experienced and trusted of the bunch, right? And what I thought was interesting is the fire wasn't the actual problem, right? I think a lot of people will read that book and focus on the escape fire and debate the tactic, the innovation. Was it brilliant or was it fatal? Did the escape fire actually catch up to his own people? But to me, the leadership lesson is simpler and much more painful, and that is that Dodge's solution wasn't listened to, wasn't adhered to, because they didn't have the relationships with the people to make it matter, right? Because they didn't know him, they hadn't heard his voice. So in the chaos of trying to outrun a fire and being told to drop all your gear, which is, soldiers, law enforcement, firefighters, we have to drop all our gear and run. That's counterintuitive to everything we've ever done, to all of our training, our meaning, why we even want the job. So to be told by your boss to drop your shit and run, you're already questioning, what's this guy doing? Right? He didn't know his people. There was no trust. There was no community bank of trust to draw from, no connection. So when the moment came and he gave that order that could have potentially saved their lives like it did his voice didn't have any weight. Right? And what I think about is why our everyday connections, what that drives back to me is the importance of our everyday connections as leaders, as parents, as coaches, not focused on, I'm going to do this when the time comes, or this big event, then I'll act this way. But how do we act every day? Right? Because we like to think in crisis we're going to be calm, decisive, and heroic. But are we that way in our mundane moments? The hallway conversations, the check-ins with our people that aren't about their performance, but about, hey, how's your family doing? Or I noticed you've been carrying a lot of weight. Like, what's going on? Is there something we can help you with? You've been tasked with a big assignment. Do you need some support? How about the small acknowledgments and just the consistent presence of showing up, being there, being even-keeled, listening, getting input? See, these moments feel routine and are so easy to skip past, to not see as important. But what they are is the deposits in the trust account, right? If I'm going to trust you, have you deposited in me outside of the chaos so that when the day comes that you need to give me hard feedback, hold a boundary, or lead our team through chaos, that account isn't empty. You see, when leaders skip the connection, 3 predictable things can happen. One is that when you try to deliver feedback, it feels like punishment. Right? Without relationships, accountability feels like a personal attack. And instead of learning, the natural instinct is for me to defend myself. Right? 2, discipline becomes personal, not development. Instead of us working together as a team and me seeing you as being on my side, it's easier to see us as opposites and opponents, and that you're against me, right? You're against my growth. And the third predictable outcome is that leadership collapses under crisis. Because people don't follow voices they don't trust. They follow the voices they know. And when I think back to that book and that moment on that fire, what these people had to have been thinking, right? Think about this, routine fire. They drop in, they lose their radio because it's dropped in the wrong spot and breaks. When we turn around, we start running, and our lives are on the line, and somebody makes a decision, but it's not a voice we've trained with. It's not a voice we've been with. And all the people we're training with also feel the same way. And they're all saying, run for the ridge, run for the ridge. I have a choice. Which voice do I listen to? And it wasn't that they didn't like him. It wasn't that the decision was terrible. It saved his life. It's the fact that they didn't know him beforehand. Right? The lack of connection caused the hesitation and caused them to decide which order to follow. And for 13 of them, it led to their deaths. Right? And here's what I want you to think about: connecting and having that connection isn't a complicated thing. It's consistent. For example, here's what it looks like in practice: knowing your people's names and using them. right? Knowing their strengths, their stressors, their story of why they're even on the team with you. What is it they want from the job or the position? Who are they providing for? Why is that important to them? Being present, listening, showing rapport with them, building rapport before you try to hold people accountable, and showing up in the small moments so that you're trusted in the big ones. Asking questions of the people around you that aren't tied to a task or doing a thing, but are generally because you're interested in who they are. Celebrating our small wins. And how about this one? Noticing when people put in effort, go the extra mile, and not just the outcomes of celebrating when something goes right and we win, but even if people try something new, they move themselves, they push their boundaries, and maybe they come up short. We got to make corrections and try it again. Noticing the effort that went into that. And being human, not sitting behind your title and your rank or your authority, but actually being a living, breathing human that has flaws and faults and can accept responsibility and mistakes that we make. You see, connection isn't soft, it's strategic, it's protective, and truly it's what keeps teams alive and allows them to flourish. See, if we're a leader that only wants to show up when something's wrong, that only engages when there's a problem, that only speaks to teams when there's a correction to be made, here's what's happening. The people are going to start associating that leader with negativity. They brace themselves when the leader walks in. They avoid conversations instead of seeking them. They sit in meetings silent instead of contributing. You see, if I am a person that comes around, I'm looking for the wrong, I'm always giving correction and feedback and stuff without the relationship, I can create my own fear. Right? But you see, when we have the connection, we know who our people are, and they know who we are, and we're allowed to be human amongst each other, and we celebrate mistakes, we celebrate victories, we grow together, well, then our correction becomes growth. And you see, the science behind connection is that it's not just emotional, although we like to feel valued, it's neurological, right? When people feel connected to a leader, stress response is lower. Their willingness to solve their own problems increases. Their ability to be coached, which means to take feedback, change, and produce a different result, improves. Their resilience to bounce back rises, the trust deepens, and our connection literally changes the brain's ability to hear, process, and respond to correction because we're getting it in a manner that feels good to us. We're getting it in a manner that's positive. Without it, we're in protection mode. With it, we learn. So bringing that all the way back to Wag Dodge and his decision to light the fire, the escape fire, to stop the main fire, and to hunker down, robbing that fire of its fuel, saved his life. Now, we don't know, hindsight's 2020, we don't know if it would have saved everybody's lives, but imagine if he'd have trained with his crew, that his bosses hadn't saw his talents to fix things and do the other stuff on base as more important than bonding with his teams. What about if he learned their names and shared meals with them? They had that rapport and trust. Imagine if when in the canyon he yelled for them to drop your tools and follow me. They recognized his voice, they trusted his judgment, and they believed in him for who he was. Maybe the escape fire would have worked. Maybe the crew would have survived and the story would have been different. You see, leadership isn't about being right all the time. It's about being trusted. And that Mangold's tragedy is a reminder that leadership isn't defined by the brilliance of your ideas or the correctness of your decisions. It's literally defined by the relationships of the people around you. So as leaders, we don't get to choose when the fire turns on us in life. We don't get to choose when the chaos arrives. But we do get to choose whether or not our people are going to trust us because we showed up in the day-to-day. And the trust is built long before the chaos arrives. So before I wrap up this episode, one, if you're into this kind of stuff, do me a favor, read that book, Young Men of Fire. It's fantastic. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, what you take away from it. Because I want to challenge you to take one small step, connect with one person on your team today for no other reason than you want to get to know them better. And it doesn't matter if you're a coach, an employer, a supervisor at work, anybody that's in your circle of influence, take a moment and get to actually ask them some questions and listen. Not to fix anything, not to correct anything, just to connect. And if you're a supervisor of supervisors, set that expectation for your team. Have the supervisors you're leading connect with their team. And one of the little things I have to do sometimes, depending on the work groups I'm working with, is have them set a calendar reminder once a week to go around and notice all the good their team's doing, to just break the cycle of always looking for the bad. Because when the chaos comes, the fire comes, whatever it is in your world, the strengths of your relationships matter more than anything else. And the best time to start building those is right now. So have a great week, everybody. Thanks for being here. Get over, like, subscribe, share. Do me a favor, hop in the show notes and check out the sponsors of the show. We got some great deals for you in there. And support them for supporting us, and let's keep blowing up this community. Thank you so much for being here.